Christmas Day is thought to be a time for family, joy and peace. But in one Milton Keynes apartment block, this night was anything but peaceful. A teenage boy, bleeding from a stab wound, locked himself in the bathroom, while next door a young woman staggers onto a balcony, clutching her throat, gasping for breath and calling for help. All the while, her killer just calmly walked away. The man at the centre of this carnage was 49-year-old Jazwell Brown, a father, a neighbour and a partner. By the end of the night, 2 women would be dead, 2 men would be fighting for their lives, and a community left asking, how could this happen and why? Hi, I'm Harley. This is All I'm Saying Is. Here we do uncovered cases that you've never heard of from all corners of true crime, mainly focusing in the UK. But before we get into this case, it's time to do my disclaimer. This is a true crime case. It involves real people. Them real people do have family and they do have friends. So although I do want you to comment and I do want you to share, please do so with sensitivity. To understand what happened on that violent Christmas night, we need to go back to the troubled past of Jazwell Brown and the people whose lives would cross his in the most tragic of ways. Born on the 11th of December 1975, Jazwell Lendon Brown was born in North London and raised between North London and Milton Keynes. By 2024, Jazwell was living in Newton Leys area of Bletchley, Milton Keynes. Jazwell had a history of criminal behaviour. Court records show that he had 10 prior convictions for 15 offences, dating all the way back to 1994 when he was just 19-year-old. These included property damage and a 2009 conviction for battery against a former partner. That ex is Amanda, and she is the mother of his son, who was born in about 2006-2007. By all accounts, there was little bond between Jazwell and his son. Amanda noted there was never a father-son relationship between them. According to her, Jazwell has always been a bit violent. She described him as basically a monster who targets vulnerable people to control them. And we know plenty of them on this channel, don't we? Jazwell has also got a clear history with drugs. He was a long-term user of Class A drugs, notably crack cocaine. And this drug abuse pervaded his personal life. So come 2024, he was living with his girlfriend, Joanne Pearson, in a council flat on Santa Cruz Avenue in Milton Keynes. Joanne was 38 years old, making her 11 years younger than Jazwell. She had 2 children of her own, but despite being together for some years, they didn't have any children together. Neighbours described their relationship as unhealthy due to their frequent use of hard drugs and loud arguments. So far, this has got all the trade signs of a true crime case, hasn't it? You've got a DA drug addict living with a younger woman. But I assure you, this isn't as typical as it might sound. Exactly 2 weeks after Jazwell's 49th birthday was Christmas Day 2024. And how better to spend Christmas morning than smoking crack? And that's exactly what they did, Jazwell and Joanne. Later on that day, at around 4:45 in the evening, Jazwell's son arrived at the flat. But it still wasn't going to be the fairy tale Christmas that we see on movies, playing games and watching TV. And if I was you, I'd hold on, because things are about to escalate extremely fast. His son hadn't been at the flat long before Jazwell turned to Joanne and asked her to pass him the crack pipe. But she refused. Her reason for refusing Jazwell was because his 17-year-old son was there and she didn't really want them doing it in front of him, which, let's be fair, is a very reasonable reason to refuse. But that alone seemed to have massively sparked Jazwell's suspicion and rage. At first he sat quietly, but he weren't being peaceful. He were festering. Then all of a sudden, without any warning, Jazwell got up, armed himself with a kitchen knife and a screwdriver off the table in the living room, and launched a frenzied attack on Joanne, stabbing her repeatedly without saying a word. His son was right there witnessing it, and incredibly bravely, he tried to save her. But in response, Jazwell stabbed his own son in the chest, inflicting a deep 12-centimetre wound which pierced his diaphragm and his liver. As Joanne was being stabbed, she screamed, "Jazz, no, you're killing me. Tell my children I love them." I mean, if anything in this case is heartbreaking, that line is the one. His son realised that there were no stopping him, so he got himself away, and bearing in mind he's gravely injured as well, he managed to flee, locked himself in the bathroom, and called the police. But he wouldn't be the only one to call the police that evening. Multiple people in the flats, people that could see it, multiple people called the police, and that started happening about 6:30. Now, what comes next was so unexpected to even me. And that's because we're massively underestimating how much of a monster Jazwell was, how angry he was, and how violent he was. The attack on Joanne lasted for 6 minutes. But this wasn't just an attack on Joanne. This wasn't Jazwell going after Joanne because she didn't do what he wanted. This is Jazwell attacking the world. While Jazwell's son is in the toilet, on the phone to the police, he can hear his dad turning his rage away from Joanne and towards her pet Staffordshire Bull Terrier dog, Tilly. He stabbed the dog, causing it to yelp in pain. Jazwell then picked up a baseball bat and forced his way into the bathroom where his son was hiding. Once inside, he bludgeoned his own son with the bat, beating the teenager until he lost consciousness on the bathroom floor. By the time his son had come back to, Jazwell had already left the flat. Tragically, his son had found his father's girlfriend, Joanne, laying dead on the floor, having suffered catastrophic injuries. In total, Joanne had sustained 31 wounds to her face, neck, chest, abdomen, and limbs, along with blunt force trauma from the bat. Several wounds were so deep that they punctured a jugular vein and a lung, and some knife scratches were even found on her body during the post-mortem. These injuries proved fatal to 38-year-old mother of two, Joanne, and she died at the scene. Jazwell's son had blood and air in his chest cavity from the deep 12-centimetre stab wound which pierced his diaphragm and liver. He later had surgery to repair the internal wounds, and a drain was inserted into his abdomen. Now, I did read the tip of his finger cut off, but I've also read about another victim, so I'm not quite sure if we're crossing victim injuries here. But someone had the finger cut off. It might have been Bradley, who we'll find out from in a minute. But he also received scalp wounds to the back of his head that are 4 to 5 centimetres. But Jazwell hadn't finished. Not only had he killed his girlfriend and massively injured his son, after the murder, he left his son unconscious on the bathroom floor and left the flat. He went straight across the corridor to flat number 7. Inside were his neighbours, 24-year-old Teohna Grant and her boyfriend, 29-year-old Bradley. They'd been having a much more normal Christmas day together, and as the day was drawing in, it's probably dark at this point, and like the rest of the people around the world, they were probably just chilling. I mean, what more is there to do on Christmas night? Unfortunately, they left their flat door unlocked, and that allowed Jazwell to just enter their flat, armed with the same knife and baseball bat. And again, without provocation, he launched a sudden attack on the couple. With a completely expressionless look on his face, he stabbed Teohna Grant multiple times. Teohna suffered 5 sharp force injuries, including a vicious stab to her neck and a severed carotid artery and jugular vein. Her boyfriend Bradley heroically tried to intervene. He pulled at Jazwell and even managed to momentarily drag him off. However, Jazwell was stocky and crazed, so he fairly easily overpowered him and repeatedly stabbed him as well. With Jazwell's attention on Bradley, Teohna, who had been mortally wounded, collapsed on her balcony, A witness across the way saw Teohna stumble out, clutching her throat and shouting, "Help, I can't breathe," before she fell to the floor. At one point, Jazwell stared Bradley dead in the eyes and continued to stab him without saying a word, showing zero empathy or hesitation. Bearing in mind, these are Jazwell's neighbours and friends, and they have been for years. They even talked normally the day before. Then all of a sudden, on one quiet, normal and peaceful night, Christmas night, he literally just bursted into their flat with a knife and a bat and started stabbing them. In shock and confusion, Bradley kept asking, "Why are you doing this? What have I done?" I did the only thing I could think of at the time, and I fell to the floor and played dead. It was that and only that got Jazwell to stop attacking him. Jazwell then literally just walked out. Once he knew he'd gone, Bradley got up and ran to the door, and through the keyhole he saw his neighbour, Joanne Pearson, laying face down. Bradley had sustained 20 wounds to his neck and multiple stab or cut injuries to his scalp and back of his head. And again, he might have lost tip of his finger. I don't know if that were Jazwell's son. Of course, the next thing Bradley did was pick up the phone, which was already covered in blood, and he managed to call 999. Despite his injuries, Bradley did survive. Dazed and bleeding, he managed to make his way down the stairwell, and when he got to the ground floor landing, still on his phone, one officer came running in, and that image haunts me. She saw me and froze. I mean, just imagine being this police officer. Bradley alone has been stabbed 20 times. It must have been absolutely covered in blood, just all over. So these officers rushed upstairs and found Teohna on the balcony of the flat. She suffered cardiac arrest, and despite efforts to try and save her, she was pronounced dead at the scene just before 8:10 that evening. She'd received 5 sharp force injuries, one of which was a stab wound to the neck, which severed a carotid artery and damaged a jugular vein, causing rapid loss of blood and lack of consciousness and death. In the span of 10 to 15 minutes, Jazwell Brown had turned a holiday gathering into a bloodbath. By the end of his rampage, 2 women were dead, his partner Joanne Pearson and their neighbour Teohna Grant, and 2 men were badly injured, one being his son and the other being his neighbour Bradley. Even the dog Tilly had been stabbed multiple times, in the neck and in the chest. Although miraculously the dog did survive thanks to emergency veterinary care. Notably, there was no clear trigger or justification for Jazwell's onslaught, apart from his cocaine-fueled paranoia. According to all survivor accounts, there had been no arguments, no provocation immediately preceding the violence. His son told police everything happened without warning. One minute his father was acting somewhat suspicious, then the next he was stabbing them, describing the ordeal being like watching a horror film, just playing out in real life. Throughout the attacks, Jazwell was described as eerily calm and blank-faced, uttering almost nothing. This silent ferocity, combined with this suddenness, made the crimes all the more terrifying and wholly unprovoked. But this case isn't finished, and it does continue to act like a horror film, because Jazwell actually just walked out the building, literally walked out, in a manner described as casual, with his hands in his pockets, leaving behind a trail of blood. Oh, and he did also have the dog with him, that he just stabbed several times. He had the dog on a lead. While outside, he saw his son, who's now stood there looking at him coming outside and frantically warning anyone and everyone that's outside to take refuge, saying that Jazwell will kill them. At this point, Jazwell went and got in his car, leaving the dog behind, and he drove off, out of the car park and onto the road. Police officers who just arrived not too long before were stood in the road trying to stop him. But of course Jazwell didn't stop, and he just drove on without any headlights, at high speed, ignoring traffic signals. And if anything else could make this more into a film, the police apparently had to literally jump out of the way. It really is that dramatic. Obviously, police immediately initiated a pursuit and broadcast an alert for the suspect Ford. A dramatic car chase then ensued through Milton Keynes. Jazwell was clearly impaired and desperate. He drove erratically at speeds up to 50 miles per hour in these built-up areas. But police units, including armed response vehicles, stayed on his tail. The chase ended when armed officers cornered him and stopped the vehicle at roughly 11 minutes past 7 that evening. He was forcibly removed from the driver's seat, pinned to the ground and cuffed under armed cover.
Look up! Show me your hands! Show me your hands! Show me your hands! Come on, get round the outside! Show me your hands!
I'll come forward for you, mate.
Where's where we going?
Phone in his hand! Phone in his hand! Come round!
Come on.
Where are we going? Where are we going?
Take.
Get out of the car now! Get out of the car now! Get out of the fucking car!
Put that phone down now!
Bring it!
Put that phone down now! You're not going to be tasered! Put that phone down now! Do not reach for anything! Knife!
Knife in car! Knife in car!
Knife secure! Happy to stay with that, yeah?
Get the fucking floor!
And see if we can move him out between the cars.
I've got my foot. Out of the way.
Lay fucking down!
Let's get him up slightly. Yeah. On your feet. Get onto your feet. Do it now. Walk
Happy?
forward. Yeah.
More up.
Right, onto the floor! Onto the floor!
Yeah. Get onto the floor.
Onto the floor! Arm out! Arm out!
Listen, put your legs out and stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Resisting!
Stop resisting.
Throw it down then.
Officers later referred to their notes, saying that he appeared spaced out and dazed in a way that was consistent with heavy drug consumption, or intoxication should I say. His hands were literally covered in blood, and on the front passenger seat of his car, police found a blood-stained kitchen knife with his own fingerprint impressed in blood on the blade. Of course, Jazwell was immediately arrested on suspicion of murder and related charges. Upon arrest and caution, he initially said nothing of any substance anyway, but while being transported to Milton Keynes custody suite in the police van, he began without prompt to blurt out incriminating statements. He also continued to do so in the holdings though.
There's been a murder in there. You know what I mean? Not self-defense, plain murder. You're a murderer. Get it?
In total, there's 3 people being stabbed. Without leaving anything out, tell me what happened.
No comment.
Do you know anything about anyone being stabbed yesterday on the 25th of December?
No comment.
Oh Jesus, what happened tonight? What happened tonight? Oh boy. Pure fucking madness. Pure madness. I've gone fucking crazy, guys. Just gone crazy. In one recorded outburst, he exclaimed, "Oh, what happened tonight? I've gone bloody loony. It's not self-defense. Murder. It's plain murder. Not self-defense. Murder." He admitted to officers, "I lost my cool tonight." Dude, what the fuck? You didn't lose your cool. You fucking went on a mad rampage. Of course, the spontaneous admission would later be used in evidence against him. You have your right, remain silent, yada yada. But back at the crime scene, detectives and forensic teams sealed off the area and began collecting evidence throughout the night, throughout Christmas night and into Boxing Day. The forensic evidence linking Jazwell to the attacks was abundant. Inside his flat, investigators recovered the bloody baseball bat that he'd been using. The DNA analysis later showed it had Joanne's blood on it. The knife found in his car again tested positive for the victim's DNA and let's not forget he's got his fingerprint on the blade. Blood from Joanne and Bradley were also splattered on his trainers and other bits of clothing, which he was still wearing when he was arrested. I mean, this is a watertight case so far. But as they have to, officers still canvassed the area and obtained CCTV footage from nearby cameras, which captured portions of his movements, and even a doorbell cam got a video of the dog walking around after Jazwell had fled. Police also took statements from eyewitnesses, including the neighbour who had witnessed Teohna desperately pleading for help on the balcony and then saw Jazwell speed off in his car. While held in custody, Jazwell underwent a toxicology screening that same night. The blood sample was taken at 10:30, so it's like 3 or 4 hours after the murder started. And of course, they confirmed he was under the influence of both cocaine and cannabis at the time of the offence. The next day is Boxing Day, and of course Jazwell is still in custody. And because he's been saying that he's going crazy and stuff, he was seen by a liaison psychiatric nurse because he had mentioned all that sort of stuff. However, no acute psychiatric crisis was ever identified at that stage. The day after, so 27th of December 24, he was formally charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, possession of a bladed article in public, and causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. A large police cordon still remained at Santa Cruz Avenue flats for days, with forensic officers combing the scene and media reporting on the shocking incident. After the initial magistrates' court appearance in late December 2024, the case was obviously sent straight to Crown Court. It was Luton, because that's what covers Milton Keynes. He appeared for a preliminary hearing on the 18th of February 2025. By then, his defence solicitors had arranged for a psychiatric evaluation to explore any issues of criminal responsibility or fitness to plead. Diminished responsibility, it's coming, get ready for it. But the consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Ian Cummins, interviewed him in jail on the 18th of February and later provided a report dated the 3rd of June 25. Dr. Cummins concluded that Brown did not suffer from any enduring mental illness that caused the attacks. The disturbance to mental state at the time was caused by taking drugs and not any pre-existing mental health condition. And Jazwell Brown was fit to stand trial. In other words, Jazwell's actions were attributed to acute intoxication, cocaine-fueled delirium, rather than psychosis or insanity. This means he had no basis for insanity or diminished responsibility. Confronted with the mountain of evidence against him, he now had no chance of diminished responsibility, so he had no other choice than to plead guilty rather than contest the trial. And so, on the 15th of April 2025, he pled guilty to all 6 charges, sparing the families a trial. So to get the sentencing, the prosecution outlined the gruesome sequence of events for the court, emphasising the assaults were wholly unprovoked and driven by cocaine use. They highlighted the extreme violence and vulnerability of the victims, noting, for example, that Jazwell's neighbour and friend Bradley was stabbed while trying to protect his loved one, and Jazwell's own son was grievously wounded in the act of betrayal. They also highlighted the huge amount of evidence that they had against him. On the defence's side, Jazwell's counsel did not try to mount any claim of self-defence or any other type of excuse. However, Jazwell expressed no formal remorse in court beyond his guilty plea. If anything, his earlier comments, "I lost my cool," came off as a self-centered remark rather than true remorse. According to reporters, he remained largely impassive during these court proceedings. And on the 17th of June 2025, Jazwell Brown returned to Luton Crown Court to be sentenced for his 6 offences. Before discussing the mitigation and aggravating factors, the judge hinted at the possibility of a whole life order. However, after a short rambling that judges do, the judge stated that the prosecution had decided it would not be appropriate, and the judge agreed. Because the case involved two people, the judge deemed that the starting point for the minimum term should be 30 years, which, let's face it, is a joke. So for aggravation, we've got the fact that a knife was used to murder Joanne. She was stabbed many times and beaten with a baseball bat. On Teohna's side, that is a bit different because the knife was taken to the scene, and as you know, that is a major aggravating factor these days. And again, she was stabbed many times and the bat was also used. Like I've said, just taking a knife to the scene for a single murder gives you a starting point of 25 years. The murders occurred in a domestic setting, so especially a DA context where Joanne is referred to. The ferocity of the violence used against Joanne. Both of the murders were aggravated by the other 4 counts. The stabbing of a dog is another aggravating factor. Not sure how that's not double counting, because I'm sure he gets sentenced for that as well. The possession of a knife in a public place is already taken into account for the 2 murders, but it does weigh in for another sentence because he took it out in his car after the murders. It is a serious aggravating factor that these murders were committed under the influence of Class A drugs. The fact that he attempted to escape by dangerous driving is another aggravating factor. The fact that he's got other offences on his rap sheet, including the one of DA against his ex, is another aggravating factor. In regards to mitigation, he got the early guilty plea in. That's it. Very little mitigation against all the aggravation, but all that is just for the murders. So count 3 is the attempted murder of his son. That's a 24-year starting point, aggravated by him using weapons in a sustained attack against his own son, significant physical harm to a child, committed under drug intoxication, but then he did get a 25 reduction for his guilty plea. Count 4, attempted murder of Bradley, again 25-year starting point, aggravated by the fact that he brought multiple weapons to the scene. It was a sustained and brutal assault, and it was performed while high on Class A's. Mitigation, again 25% reduction for the guilty plea. Count 5, causing unnecessary suffering to a protected animal, the dog Tilly. It was deliberate, it was high culpability, and in mitigation it's 25% for guilty plea. 6th charge, final charge, is possession of a bladed article or knife in a public place. The knife was being carried during a violent escape, is the only aggravation. Mitigation, 25% reduction. So, on with the actual sentences. For the murder of Joanne Pearson, the sentence is imprisonment for life with a minimum term of 39 years less 171 days in custody. For the murder of Teohna Grant, the sentence is the same. Life imprisonment with a minimum of 39 years less the 171 days already spent in custody, and they are to run concurrent to each other. For charge 3, attempted murder of his son, he got 18 years to run concurrent. For the attempted murder of Bradley, charge 4, he got 21 years to run concurrent. Causing unnecessary suffering to Tilly the dog, 9 months to run concurrent. For possession of a knife in a public place, 18 months to run concurrent. So Jazwell Brown was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 39 years. Now let's face it, you kind of go 39 years minimum. He did a lot of harm, it was very extreme. But Jazwell Brown is 49 at the time of sentencing, so he will be 88 before he can even talk to a parole board, if he lives that long. So let's face it, Jazwell Brown is never getting out, and when he does, he'll be nearly 90. So let's run through the statements. There's a lot of people involved, so I haven't got any full statements. Bradley addressed Jazwell in his statement. Speaking about Teohna, he said, "We both thought of you as our neighbour and a close friend for a number of years. He described how losing Teohna, the love of his life, and suffering with his own injuries had left him in endless trauma. My whole world and future was heinously taken away by you. The impact of your crimes have had on me are never ending. The world will now and forever go on without you here. Outside the court, he described Teohna as a fun-loving girl who was all about the world. I'll remember her in all the small memories we've had and the big ones. The happy memories. The silly things we got up to. I think justice has been served. I think now Teohna can smile up in heaven and we will all start to heal. I do at least feel happy now that he will never see the light of day, and the likelihood is he will die in prison. Teohna's grieving sister said she was a pure and kind soul, irreplaceable, and told Brown to his face, I don't see Christmas as Christmas anymore. I see it as the day you stole my sister. I have an irrational fear that anyone I come across will be like you. Joanne Pearson's mom shared that their family is haunted by imagining how horrific Joanne's final moments were at the hands of Jazwell Brown. She said that their faith in humanity had been shaken and that we don't think we will ever understand why this happened. Speaking outside of court, Jazwell's son described his father as a scumbag and said he was nothing like the man. He added he was a very nasty man and he got what he deserved. His mom, Jazwell's ex, also talked outside the court. She said that she was relieved that he had been jailed, but added, no one's a winner in this. It's like a horror movie. The man has always been a bit violent. He was basically a monster. There was never a father-son relationship. He uses vulnerable people, he homes in on them because he can control them. He's got what he deserved. I'm hoping we can all move forward now. And that is all I've got for you. As you know, I like to end my cases with a bit of helpful advice, a bit of helpful information. We are trying to sound preachy. And I can't do that here, can I? Because the only good advice is don't fucking do drugs. Do you know, I've done my fair bit in my time when I was younger. And I decided I like to control my head. So I stopped. And I was talking to someone this other night. I don't even like drinking for that exact reason. I'm not going to preach to and tell you not to use drugs because everybody knows we shouldn't use drugs and whatever else. And I'm not a preachy prick. So whatever. I will, however, put links down below. Jazwell was DA and he was a drug addict, and I dare say Joanne might have been because the information I've got suggests that she was smoking crack with him. So as always, if there's helpful links, I'll put them. I am going to put in the description links for DA victims and drug addicts for the top 3 countries. So UK, and it's usually America second, and then it might be Canada or Australia third. Again, I really wish I could give advice, I could give help, but there is nothing here. If you're sat in a room with someone that's supposed to love and protect you and they all of a sudden get up with a knife, there is no advice I can give for that. There is help if you're in a DA relationship, so please do look at the links below. There's certain things you can do, like the DuckDuckGo browser. If you use the DuckDuckGo browser, it has a fire button in the top, so you can delete all history, wipe it instantly, gone. So if you are scared of looking for help in case your partner goes through your history or something, DuckDuckGo browser is an alright browser to use. There's also other ways, like on Chrome, if you go in the top right corner where the tabs are, or the 3 dots, click on either of them and you want the incognito tab. It doesn't hide you and make you private, but what it does is anything that happens in the incognito tabs or incognito windows, it doesn't store on your computer. So there'll never be search show up. Unless your partner's got some sort of keylogger on your phone or something. Obviously that is also possible. I don't know. I'm just trying to help. And again, if you are in a situation where you can't even Google for help, if you can't even follow my links in the description, then there will be times where you can talk to somebody. It's very rare that it's that extreme, but them cases do happen. If you're in a DA relationship, you know you are. Even if you're currently lying to yourself and tricking yourself that you're not, you are. It'll change, and it's just because he's stressed and stuff. No. We had a conversation with someone the other week, and in the pub, and their partner had just done something to them. And Steph was saying, Nah, walk away because it'll happen again. No, it's first time and it'll never happen again because I'll bash him, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sat listening. And 10 minutes later, she said something else. Oh, about when she'd been arrested because of something he did. And it clicked on me. So I said, whoa, go back a minute. When you got arrested, what happened? Oh, yeah, he did this, so I did that. I said, I thought you said this was first time. Don't trick yourself into thinking this is first time. Don't trick yourself into thinking, well, this time's different. It's not. It's not. I would never, ever hit Steph or raise my hand to her or anything else like that. Or any other partner. It's just not what you do. And in fact, if any of my kids ever even tried, then things would get bad because, you teach your kids not to do that to women. Anyway, I'm rambling. Respect and love to all. All I'm saying is, I love you. Take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. And I'll see you real soon. Bye.